Hey there, I'm Jesse Hall, and I'm your host for Business Elite Brevard Edition, the podcast that brings you all of the influencers, innovators, and industry leaders from right here on the Space Coast.
Yes, that's right. This is Jesse, and this is Business Elite Brevard Edition. Thanks so much for tuning in today. What an epic episode I have prepared for you guys. In the studio joining me is Matt Susin. Matt Susin and I were recognized over the summer for 2020 from the EDC, and to get this right, I had to write it down. He is the recipient of the Excellence in Education for Economic Development Impact Award. It's kind of a mouthful. Do you know exactly what that means, Matt?
Well, you know, I've been blessed with a lot of individuals that have supported a lot of the different initiatives that I've put forward, and along with some of their initiatives that I've supported.
Right.
All the way from the largest jobs program in the United States to career and technical programs that are one of a kind.
Right.
Across the board. So I think that's it. But I'll tell you, the award, I think I'm the only recipient that has not received, that does not have a doctor next to their name.
Is that right?
A bunch of letters. Yeah, you looked at the past recipients, and it goes doctor this, doctor that, doctor this, doctor that, and then Matt Susin. So I was pretty honored to be a part of that. That was through the Space Coast Economic Development Council.
Right.
And there's just some great people in there, and they do some great work.
The board of directors is probably the who's who of Brevard County, and even beyond. I think there's some Volusia and Orlando people in there. But a lot of people have a vested interest into the EDC and what they do here. So that's also very exciting to be recognized for, again, your contribution. So let's talk about that contribution. And then, of course, we're going to dive in. So for those listeners, if you have questions, comments, thanks so much for joining us on the Facebook Live who are there. For those listening after the fact, please go ahead and smash that follow or subscribe button. We'd love to have you notified when we go live the next time, or of course, when we publish new episodes. So with that being said, what gave you, I guess, the credential or the availability to be recognized? You've been with the Brevard public school system for a little bit, but what was it so special that the EDC just thought, man, this guy really deserves to be recognized?
So when you look across at the board, right, so you have multiple facets. So businesses today are not relocating into industry areas because of incentives. They're just not. Like, that is it's gone by.
Right.
And so what they're looking for now is workforce and career training, because there's many instances of companies that have transferred into areas that don't have a workforce, and it just dies. Plus, you have to look at the schools. So you have to have workforce in schools, because you have to have people move from different areas to that area. So what we ended up doing is we created some of the most innovative career and technical programs while I was on the board to begin with. So we had a manufacturing program that we created at Bayside High School, one of a kind in the state of Florida, with CNC machines inside there, and kids are actually building and cutting machines and getting their CNC manufacturing licenses and coming out. We also built the only standing aviation hangar in the entire United States at a high school. And I'll say that again, the only one in the country. And Governor DeSantis came last Monday to honor his entire CTE program came out of that aviation program. He was inside of it to give the announcement, right?
Wow.
Well, that doesn't even stop there. So we created and upgraded 6 construction schools and tied them in with industry. So the Home Builders and Contractors Association of Brevard,
great people,
the ABC, the Associated Builders and Contractors, into those constructions, and we're working on some really innovative stuff. So that is just from a standpoint of creating the career, the programs.
That's right.
Then all of a sudden, we created the largest jobs program in the United States. We were honored nationally at the National Conference in Jacksonville for creating a jobs program that had never been seen before. We had over 1,000 kids working over the summer in internships and everything in industry. And let's face it, these kids these days, they're pretty lazy, man. So we got to push them to get off the couch. It's real easy. I mean, we didn't have some of the fun stuff they've got at home. And so now we've got to get them off mom's couch and get them out there in reality. So that's what we did. So those were some of the things. Now, the other thing that happened that is probably the flagship of what we did was the CPT program. So the Economic Development Council created a CPT program, and Linda Weatherman was an absolute animal.
Oh, she's a gem,
Oh, no. Like literally when she started it, she said, we've got to go get funding. And we showed up at the Macedonia church in Palm Bay with 8 African-American, preachers. And they said, we will get behind you. And that's where it started. And there was so much energy behind helping out a lot of the community members in getting that next job training. And then from there, it just skyrocketed. Did you know that they have the highest rate of success of any CTE program in the entire state of Florida. They have job placement in the 90%. So every kid that goes through
That's
there,
amazing.
literally, and the only kids that haven't are the ones that already had the jobs before.
Oh,
so like literally,
right.
right. So it's absolutely an amazing program. They've put over 350 kids in through the program.
Wow.
And you have success stories. It's not just students. It goes all the way up to individuals that are 65, 75 years old. And we had some people come in and they said, I want a career change. And one of the first ladies that came through, and by the way, it's almost the same amount of women as there are men. Because in manufacturing, they love women because they're very meticulous with how they do in welding and everything else. So not many people know that.
That's fascinating.
It is amazing. So anyways, it's a great. So some of those programs were
Right.
the reason that I was recognized. I'm the chairman of the CPT program for the EDC and have been for the last 4 years.
Precisely. For those listening, what is CPT?
A certified production technician. It's 4 components that kids go through.
Right.
And what they do is when they complete the course, which takes no more than 8 weeks, tops, at the end of the 8 weeks, they get 16 college credits towards an associate in science degree. And they also get not only it's insane.
What?
Oh, yeah.
I need to do that.
Yeah, I know, right? So they not only get that, but they get their OSHA certification. They get
That's
their
huge.
soldering certification. So a lot of workers, here's what happens in the workforce today.
Right.
They have a lot of kids that come in and say, oh, I want to try that job. But they may not be qualified or they may not have the initiative to get to the next level. So this process allows them to go through and be kind of qualified.
Right.
So many manufacturers that may not even need those skills are actually hiring these kids because they're coming right out of the pipe.
Wow. And for some of us who have been in the know, this is not news. Although I didn't know we had a hangar for a high school.
I got to have you come by, man.
Which high school is that?
Listen, O'Galley. So listen, let me
They have a
explain
hangar?
something. Let me explain
I drive by
something.
it all the time.
Yeah. So let me explain something.
Okay.
O'Galley not only has a hangar for aviation, they have a boat program, right? Yeah, marine program. So there's kids in there turning engines. They actually have a
God,
pool.
I wish that's so valuable.
All right, right. And they also have automotive. So it is the only school. Now, this is another fact in the United States. Now, you hear about all this stuff in this. Listen, I'm tired of hearing what New York has, what Texas has, what all these other places. We want to know what Brevard has.
Right.
And Brevard has the only school that not only do they have marine mechanics, they have their own aviation program with a standalone hangar, and they have one of the most innovative automotive programs. They're building a streetcar in there that they're going to race. I mean, there's some stuff going on at O'Galley that is absolutely amazing, and that's just one of our high schools. We have that in almost every high school.
Automotive, marine mechanics, aviation. I mean,
there's jets in there, by the way, and helicopters the kids are working on.
What?
Oh, yeah. You go inside there. I mean, you know what we should do? You and I should do a show in there and invite all the people to come
I have
out.
a portable studio.
I think, well, then we should go do that. We'll go inside. We'll actually do it from inside the jet. That would be crazy.
That would be a first.
We can get inside
the
jet.
I've done podcasts on cruise ships, but I've never done it on a jet. You're going to see it here first, folks, okay? Wow. Blowing my mind today already, out of the gate. So, I mean, if you haven't heard this news, go ahead and drop a like or a comment. Share this broadcast, please, because this is just the beginning, tip of the iceberg. So, of course, that's why you're recognized. If you can get some of the, I don't want to say more basic languages, because they're all highly sought after and they could become a career in itself.
Yep.
I know CNC manufacturers who are building all kinds of things, and you write the code and the machine does the work, and and listen, if there's going to be any kind of easy transfer, easy migration from one thing to the other, it's these kids playing video games and then go into like a CAD machine,
right,
or something else. If you're already doing Minecraft, like you could do CAD.
Right.
And now you're doing, now you're building stuff and I'm in real estate, of course, with the advent of 3D homes now.
Oh, yeah.
Like these kids could be like joining HBCA.
Yeah.
And going right into, because we already have a home that was 3D printed on Sarno.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
welcome to the Space Coast, right?
Welcome to the Space Coast. More with, of course, only here on Business Elite Brevard Edition. We are seeing just all kinds of promise. So if a kid can come out of high school with a CAD or CNC or that CPT certification, which gives them pretty much soldering and all these components, that's so valuable.
Well, and just so you know, even if you're a homeschool student,
right,
you can still take that one class.
Right.
So we make the availability for individuals. Like we have kids that take like Florida Virtual School. Why are they not coming in? I don't think the parents understand that you can come in and register for our career and technical programs. And a lot of the parents don't understand that. And I'm telling you right now, there is nothing better. We should do that, and then we should go over to the automotive that day, because they've got some race cars in there that they're working on. It's fun stuff, man.
You know, we have people like E.J. Larson in town. You know, with the rocket drag. Strip, dragsters. You know, we have a lot of very, very cool, fast people, fast things happening here. Rockets on the ground, rockets in the sky. You know,
if there's a rocket, we'll attach it to something and launch it. Yeah.
You know, I think in Brevard County alone, you know, there's more jet engines at any time per capita.
Yeah, you can say that.
So of course you're recognized for that, and I think that's so valid. And not only can anybody of all ages, of all backgrounds, take advantage of this program, not just high school kids, not just college kids. Really, if you want to reinvent yourself, because what is a starting salary for some of these jobs?
Well, if you're talking about starting salary for some of the like welding, we created a welding program in Astronaut, right?
Wow.
So, one of the issues is you have bimetal welding that's coming out of the Kennedy Space Center. It's not done many other places. Like you're welding aluminum to steel and that kind of stuff. So we created a welding program to tie into a lot of the Kennedy Space Center stuff. Those kids are coming out making 60, 70 before they at 18 years old.
Amazing.
I mean, they're making more money when you take it, right? A 4-year journeyman in welding will make more money than the doctors that are coming out right now, because you got to figure the doctors also have to pay their medical malpractice. They have to pay the staff. I mean, they've gotten so bogged down with all of their student debt. There's no reason why not to. And that's the same for aviation techs. That's the same for manufacturers, for CNC welding, everything. It's absolutely amazing.
Because the NASA program ended mid-10s, it left just a vacuum. I mean, because there's so many CNC manufacturers, and these guys were tasked with one ball bearing. You know, with a tolerance of like 0.000, you know, whatever. I mean, you had to get that thing perfectly perfect, you know, and that's all you had to do. You were responsible for one thing. So when the shuttle program ended, you had these guys who just did, you know, the same thing for 20 years. These machines were, you know, calibrated all the time to produce one or two, you know, small items, and then that failed, and so we left a vacuum, and all these CNC, you know, manufacturers like, now what do we do? So to see them, you know, getting back to work, and then of course now, you know, a lot of those guys are aging out, and so now we have a professional vacuum, you know, a skilled labor vacuum. And so for you to get behind that and spearhead that and give these kids an opportunity to not just have to work, you know, a minimum wage job after school, or have to get into student loan debt to go to a 4-year program.
Listen, you're speaking my world, but I did want to cut in and just say one thing is that all of the things that I have done have never been done on my own. Superintendent Dr. Mullins, amazing. He has driven what is coming out in May, which is Manufacturing Month for us.
Very cool.
Is going to make headlines across the nation.
Is that right?
Oh, there's some stuff coming out, and then
Do
also
you
we have.
Break it?
No. Come on, man. We got
little
some
tease. Yeah.
Basically, here's what happens. Workforce development in many counties is not done very well. So they'll create a program, but they don't have the teachers to teach the program, or the advertising to get the people into the program. Or they'll create a program that's not piped into an industry. So what we did in Brevard, and again, I am not the one. So like if you look at the CPT program, you have Linda Weatherman and her team. You look at the school district, you have Dr. Mullins, and you have a lady named Miss Rutledge, who is the most amazing CTE director ever. And we have all of these individuals that have been working together to create this pipeline. And what it is, so if you have a company and you come to Brevard, what we do is we look at how we can help your company get the workforce that you need. The aviation program in O'Galley is a stone's throw from the airport. The reason is that we have those kids go through. So one of the companies that I work for has a jet that they fly in. When we flew into Melbourne in the Apex, we landed, and the kids came out to work on that were from the O'Galley program that we actually had inside the certified production, or inside the certified technician out of the aviation program. So we create programs that fit the industry and then fit that workforce. That pipeline is not done in many other places. They just throw money at it. So like people come out with these ideas and they throw money at stuff, but it's not done effectively. And that is a testament to Linda Weatherman, Dr. Mullins, and the Brevard County School Board for what we do.
Because with so many contractors coming to the area who need manufacturing, who need skilled tech, one of their biggest questions is, well, am I going to find labor. I mean, you guys are awesome. Of course, you're conducive with all these other benefits that you guys are sweeping us off our feet. We're loving all this love and everything else, but we're manufacturers. We need people who can lead teams of other skilled laborers. We need people with those skill sets.
We have 530 manufacturers in Brevard County. We're the 8th largest manufacturing base in the United States. So people think, oh man, Detroit and all these other places. Yeah, but number 8 in the nation is Brevard County, the Space Coast, because all of the manufacturers like Grumman and Boeing and NASA and all of the rest of them, they build their big stuff, but then all of their one-offs they send to the sub-manufacturers, right? And they call them the subprimes. The primes are the large companies. The subprimes are below them. And they fill that workforce. So they get the work orders for 6,000 bearings, for 7,000 gaskets, right? And that's what they're doing. And that is all done here because of the Space Coast Economic Development Council creates that infrastructure so that these companies can come in. So there's stories about companies relocating to areas because there was economic incentives, and then they can't even get their workers to move there because the school districts aren't good. There's no workforce, and then they just get completely destroyed. So companies are very attracted to our workforce and our space center because of the things that we do here at the EDC.
Yeah. Again, a program that I think has been, like you said, recognized. We're going to get more recognition. We're going to keep making headlines. We're going to keep pushing what a new skilled labor workforce should look like. And that means, not everybody should go to college, really. No, I mean, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need welders. Little side note, I worked offshore in the oil industry for a brief period, and we were on a derrick barge. This is a barge, we were laying a natural liquid gas pipeline away from Boston Harbor. We're 10 miles offshore from Boston to mitigate any kind of future terrorist event, because liquid natural gases, I mean, let's just put it, one tanker can level, a city. So we had to put this pipeline all the way out in the middle of the ocean. And with that, we had to build a pipeline. I met this guy, pretty cush job. He was a welding inspector. This guy would just look at a monitor over the robotics guy. They have a robot, and they would look at the deep sea divers, would make these welds, and this guy just had a robot inspect the weld, and he would sign off on it. This guy's making $2,500 a day. I couldn't believe it. He owns a beautiful place in Alaska. Right in his backyard is a glacier. Moose come by all the time. When he's working, he's in the Middle East, out there doing pipelines as well. And I couldn't believe this guy was working like 3-4 months a year, making $200,000 and.
So I'm a perfect example product of that too. When my dad was a contractor, I grew up carrying pipe at like an electrical wire at like 8 years old, right? So my dad, I didn't have spring breaks and summers. It was going to work with Dad,
Me
right?
too, yeah.
Go dig that ditch, go do that stuff, and I was on his job sites. But when it came time for me to go to college, back in the day when I was going into when it was my time to graduate high school, was when a lot of the manufacturers started offshoring a lot of their stuff to China, to Vietnam, and all that. So all of our parents said, well, you can't be in construction and manufacturing because it's going to die. So you need to get into college. So I am a perfect example of that. But I think where we do a disservice is that college is academia, but also the trade schools are college. Like we forget that the state college's jobs are to create those career and technical programs. So the guys that are also going to our career and technical schools, like plumbers and pipe fitters post 295s up in Daytona Beach, they're actually housed inside of the college in Volusia State College, or Daytona State College. So what ends up happening is they kids are attending college. It's just a different classroom, and we need to get away from people thinking that they're the only ones that carry in books. Because if you've ever looked inside of a welding book, it's pretty intense, right? It'll blow out a biology book any day.
It's metallurgy. Like you said, combining two different metals.
It's a tough weld, man.
That's alchemy.
You're
really like, now you're marrying different materials and
different heats, different welds, different solder. It's intense.
It's a science. And I looked into it after this guy told me how much he was making. I went right to, and there was one in Miami where I was living at the time, and I was like, but it was a 6-month apprentice. You have to you have to build this huge book of experience before but then you get up to the master welder, which is like another, so many credentials. Like, it's not just a guy with a mask and a torch. Like,
absolutely,
there's so much more to it, and a big deep respect to all welders and all craftsmen and skilled laborers. And by the way, you mentioned Detroit earlier. this is not the Rust Belt. It's
Right.
lab coats.
Right.
It's sterile environments. Like, you have to like go through like thresholds. They blow all the dust off you, because I mean, you're working with a lot of sensitive equipment, and so it's not the automobile assembly line, that your grandparents worked.
Yeah.
This is really nice stuff. I mean, you're working in beautiful hangars. I know Embraer's always looking for people. They're expanding real quick. We got Arion, who's about to build a business and hire another 500 people. So there's like so much skilled, like, I mean, in new technology.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to go to FIT to participate in the aerospace community. You work on that rocket engine at the local high school, and you're going to have what people need. And again, the start entry level, like you said, for example, 60, 70,000, even if it's 40,000 as a 19-year-old with benefits.
Did you know here's a funny stat for you. You're talking about CAD drawing. Did you know that Brevard Public Schools is number 2 in the state of Florida for graduates that have CAD licensing?
Wow.
So a lot of people don't understand that. We are the 10th largest school district.
Wow.
And we score in the second for the number of CAD drawers that are certified.
Amazing.
That's our staff. That's not, look, Brevard Schools, we get to go take pictures, we get to do all that fun stuff, and we get to say, well, we want career and technical.
Right.
But we would never have it if it wasn't for the BPS staff and the superintendent. So they get all the credit for that. But yeah, it's amazing what BPS does.
Combined with the job placement, I mean, I don't. If I had a kid, and he was really, having that discussion, I'd say, listen, follow your dreams, but if you still are figuring it out, get a good skill, and then work on a dream. And then the dream may come to you in 4 or 5 years, but at least you'll have, money. You're not going to be in debt. You could travel. You could do things. You could have the freedom, because a lot of these skill sets, they're universal.
Yep.
You could go across, overseas to Europe. I mean, you could take this skill set, just about anywhere.
You should see some of the salaries they're paying for people to go to forward operations in foreign countries to work with these skill sets, because they don't have them in these countries, and they need to have some of the building that they know is the codes are now starting to catch up in the other countries. So it's a very unique skill set for sure, and we're blessed to have what we have here.
And I'm so excited. And now, after all that, I want to introduce Matt to the audience, where you grew up, and tell us about what you were doing. I mean, you mentioned working with the dad doing electric. I have a similar story, except I was moving furniture with my dad all the way through high school, and of course the bigger I got, the more I had to like move stuff, but yeah, so very, very similar. But I was also the kid that had the car, that could pay the insurance, that could pay the gas. Of course, all my friends were, they were always blowing me up, as far as like pick me up, so. Yeah, I worked, but also, I didn't have my weekends and summers, but I had the car.
Well, I was not as smart as you on the working side. I didn't know what minimum wage was until I was 16. I think my dad gave me $1 an hour a day. No. Oh yeah. So, but if you talk to him, it'd be about what I was worth when I was working. So
exactly.
But anyways, no, I grew up in a place called Coral Springs originally.
I know Coral Springs.
Coral Springs is right on the edge of the Everglades. So I was like Huckleberry Finn, man, and Tom Sawyer. So
is that right?
I'd wake up every day that I didn't have school and that Dad wouldn't try to yoke me out, and I'd run right out into the Everglades. And if anybody's ever been in the dry season in the Everglades, you can run barefoot through those rivers. And so to see that grass and that wind run, it's like an ocean. It's one of the most beautiful things. And the alligators and the snakes and the fishing and the canoeing, that's how I grew up. And then when I was in about 8th grade, I moved to a place called Jupiter Farms. And Jupiter Farms is the same way. I mean, it's the same way. You got creeks, you got everything else. And that's how I grew up. I grew up a little bit different, and I wish that my children and some of the other children around could grow up with a little bit of that country in them, because it touches you in a different way to be able to be independent like that. I used to run my dirt bike all over Jupiter Farms. We used to have some fun, and it was a different way. So I would grow up with that, but then at the same time, on the major like this, the weekends I could have fun like that, but spring break and over the summers, I was always working on my dad's construction site, and that's where I got to really, I felt very comfortable with a lot of the contractors around here, because it's how I grew up. I mean, it's my father. My father's still running huge job sites in Miami.
And you're speaking the language.
Yeah, so I knew what their needs were. I knew where they came from, and I knew the people. I mean, a lot of these people sit back and they say, oh, the doctor this, the welder that. If you go to any of these guys that are trades houses, the stuff that they have inside there that they're working on as special projects and stuff is phenomenal. Their minds are are out there, and it's just a great opportunity. So I felt comfortable. Went up to college at Florida State, and if anybody says anything different, that is the greatest school in the entire nation. And if you got a problem with that, come see me.
That's right.
But yeah, and then I went to work for Greenberg Traurig Law Firm afterwards as their legislative coordinator for 4 years, and we represented.
That sounds like a lobbyist.
Yeah, technically it is.
Yeah.
So for 4 years I did that. Got to know the panhandle of Florida so well with a lot of the individuals out there, and we never lost a case. So for 4 years we not only did we defend George W. Bush for the presidency of the United States, I was actually at the table when Barry Richards was making oral arguments inside of the Supreme Court for the state of Florida, but also just a great experience. And I decided that after all of that, I said, you know what, I want to give back to the community, and I left, which after an amazing career of 4 years, I left to become a teacher.
And when did you start your teaching career?
Space Coast High School, Brevard County.
Is that right?
And I loved it. I mean, I'll tell you right now, if there's any profession that I would rather do, is teaching, because every day you get to show your life. I mean, you get to see what you give back.
What subject mattered?
American history, American government, and multicultural studies and that kind of stuff. So I was all in the But I won a national award for Veterans of Foreign Wars, National Teacher of the Year. I was honored to do a bunch of stuff, and it wasn't because I was the greatest teacher in the world. It's just because I got those kids moving. We built 35-foot teepees. We reenacted battles inside.
No way.
Oh yeah, I reenacted. I built World War I battlefields on the. Okay, I'm going to tell you a funny story. Right?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so Space Coast High School, circa I think it was 2005. I started at Space Coast, and I'm in the class teaching civil or World War I. And the World War I, they look at me and they say, Mr. Susin, what do you mean there was body parts in the trenches and everything? I got frustrated because it didn't feel like they were getting a lesson. Right. So I didn't ask the principal. I went out and rented a trench digger, and I dug 6 100-foot trenches, 6 feet deep. I poured sulfur inside of it, and then I built a bunch of tanks. And the next week, we prepared to go into what was known as the Battle of Blair Wood without the permission of the principal. Now, what ended up happening is Florida Today came out. I even had another school come out, and the principal still had not been told yet. It was Mr. Spinner. And if you call Bob now, he's retired up north, I think in Georgia, he'll tell you I put some gray hairs on his head. But every one of those kids, 300 kids were out there reenacting the Battle of Blair Wood. We had medics, we had everything, and that taught them history. So when I was a teacher, I didn't get my lessons from the textbook. We lived history. And those kids today, we rebuilt a facility at the paintball in Merritt Island, combat zone, and those kids still today, every Thanksgiving, we get back together and we battle in that trench battlefield. Right? Yeah, it was like a decade ago that I did it, man.
Wow.
And I still go over there. But I loved coaching. I did all that stuff, and then I went and got into insurance. And then when I didn't like so I stopped teaching. You know, you don't make enough money as a teacher. We all know.
Good stuff, yeah.
It is. And then after 9 years, and then I went back in and I ran for school board.
Right.
I won school board, and now I do some amazing insurance with some great companies. And I'm honored to be able to defend and fight for the kids and the teachers and everybody in our school district.
And what's your official title now with the school board?
Brevard County Vice Chairman, District 4, school board member.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How many more terms are you available for?
Oh no, man! 2 terms.
2-term
listen,
limit.
I believe in term limits.
Right.
For maybe.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I'm not going to argue with anybody who says it's just how I believe. So I'm not out there saying you need to stop. But I just believe that you need to have new blood. Right. I believe that you get stagnant. Fresh ideas, man. Look, I came on the scene. Career and technical, all of the different stuff that I had, and we're succeeding at that. And now it's time for somebody else to come in. So I'm in my 2nd term. I'll only run for 2 terms, and then I'm done. I'm not. I believe in that. As far as I've seen some people in school board that have been a part of the school board for like literally over 30 years when we go to these national conferences, and I'm like,
you don't have any new ideas.
I mean, well, some of them can because they can get there, but it's an anomaly when you get to that point where you have a successful school board member. I truly believe that you become more and more distant as you get older, in the years of experience, because you feel like you already, you kind of say, I already know all those answers, right? It's time for new blood. So in 3 years, somebody else will sit in my seat, and I'll be cheering them on every 2 weeks, watching every group come in and yell at them and say, you guys are horrible, you don't love me.
Your turn.
So yeah.
Yeah. And how much? And that's a really good rundown as far as your career, and I appreciate you sharing all that with us. Is there any other political ambition?
No, I mean right now just to do what's right for the school district.
Yeah, you just your private insurance life.
I'm telling you right now, the insurance companies that I work with, Mark III, I'm telling you right now, the most phenomenal guys. They got started in NASCAR. Okay, so you want to talk about a bunch of Type A personalities that are competitive? They are right up my alley, man.
Great.
And we're doing such an amazing thing right now. I mean, I love everything that they do. They're a great team. The owner, Neil Browder, he's fun. He knows how to do it, and he cares about the people.
Right.
You get into insurance, there's a lot of used car salesmen, right? They just are. And no matter what they are, what level, whether they're millionaires or not. But you come across some rare people sometime that actually, when they sit down, are trying to do what's right for the people. And he does. And he represents over 160 municipalities in 5 different states. So I oversee Florida for Mark III now, and we're doing very well.
And that's great to hear. We love everybody succeeding. This is why we share. This is the premise for the podcast. Just to highlight what people are doing, right? Because even as I guess my intro suggests, these are people who are not in the news, but they're making moves behind the scenes, right? So to see again your growth, your contribution, you're it seems like you're always kind of giving back.
Yeah, Rotary.
And
my Rotary is amazing.
Which Rotary are you?
Century Rotary. Now they will tell you.
That's a really good one.
Listen, I haven't been there. We had my new baby. So I have 5 children, just so you know. Yeah, and that keeps us busy too.
I'm glad you shared that.
I'm like number 6 with my wife, the 6th child. So, but I haven't been as attentive to Rotary. So if you said, "Hey, he's at Suntree Rotary," give him a call. I'd be like, "We don't even know who he is anymore." Right. They're harassing me. But Suntree Rotary, like we have a big event tomorrow. We're Temple Terrace. Actually, it's today. We're Temple Terrace. We're doing an Easter forum. We have 500 eggs, and we have a bunch of other stuff. So we go into it's a housing project in Melbourne. It's amazing. So we just sit back and. We're getting 6 big baskets. We got 500 eggs, and it's just giving back to the community as Rotarians, and they do a great job. So I'll be there today at 4:00 if you want to come hang out.
I would.
Oh, come on.
If it was any other day, we're actually opening up our new space in downtown Melbourne.
Nice. Congrats, man.
Yeah. So anyway, that's beside the point. It's mostly just for the industry, so just for agents to kind of a look. We'll have another bigger ribbon cutting later, and in which case I invite you and I command you to show up. So coming off of that, it seems like the everything you've been doing has brought a level of success. It seems like you're no matter where you get into, it seems like you're right in the middle of the action.
It's a fault of mine.
Yeah, right. But what is the secret sauce? I mean, what drives you to want to contribute and somehow you find yourself like right there at ground zero with some of these items?
Secret sauce is first having somebody along your side that is smarter than you, that works harder than you, and everything else. Because I can tell you, every major project that I've ever done, there's a person that was dedicated that was right next to me. Right. And most of the time, also you got to have a good spouse. My wife is the most amazing person in the world that allows me. Like,
shout out to the wife.
She's but she's more than that, man. Yeah. She deserves a lot of credit. So great family, first off. Second off, you got to have the ultimate person working on that with you, and then you just got to know it's a grind. So I don't know if you know, but we had something passed called the All-American Flag Act. A kid stood up in my classroom and said, "You know what, Mr. Susan, our flag's made in China." And I said, "That's BS, man. We're going to change that." Great. So the kids were like, "Well, what do you mean?" So O'Galley High School kid, Andre Matos, Puerto Rican kid, he was awesome, stood up and did it. And what ended up happening is we ended up for 3 years in the state legislature giving testimony and giving it out. I mean, they didn't give up. It was a grind, right? And that was the key to that entire success is that we just didn't give up. And some of the individuals that helped along the way, Tim Thomas, Melbourne City Council member, he came on right at the end, the last 8 months, and brought the veterans on. Great. And I truly believe that was one of them. But I think if you look at the secret sauce as one, grind it out, have somebody with you, a good team, and you'll get through anything. You watch Linda Weatherman work, holy cow. She just doesn't give up. No. And that's the success. I think having that commitment is, in the end, the characteristic you're looking for.
Perfect. We're going to just take a quick break and hit the reset button. We're going to come back on the other side of this. We're going to continue to have a lot of good discussion with, of course, our guest today, Matt Susin. So don't go anywhere. Invite your friends. We're going to come and wrap up the last part of this hour with some more from Matt. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you in the market for a new home? Perhaps you need to sell your old home and downsize or relocate. Hey there, my name is Jesse Hall with eXp Realty, and I offer professional real estate services right here on the Space Coast. Give me a call, 321-877-8737 for all of your real estate needs. Again, 321-877-8737 for all of your real estate needs. Buy, sell, invest with the best. Find out more at 321-buysellinvest.com.
Join us for the fresh, new For Your Best Self podcast with Drs. Anita Saluja and Rebecca Novo of Dermatology plus Plastic Surgery. We will reveal the facts about techniques, trends, products, and procedures to be your best self. The first and only podcast combining the synergy of aesthetic dermatology plus plastic surgery. Search For Your Best Self on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify.
All right, thanks for sticking around. We are back. Once again, Matt, thanks so much for joining us. Business Elite Brevard edition. And again, in the studio is my fellow recipient from the EDC. We both were recognized for 2020.
I got an award, but you were on the same piece of paper. You were on the media slick, man. You deserve credit, too. For what you did.
So...
why don't you tell a little bit? Come on, get some self-gratification.
Yeah, right.
Here.
Well, I've mentioned it to some of the people who watch the show regularly. So I was a volunteer of the year.
Yeah.
And it's because of my contribution, like we're doing today, inviting people who represent the EDC to tell their stories. And again, I've had John Mayer, I've had Frank DeBello. So the EDC has been great. They line up the guests for me, and these are huge people who normally I wouldn't have access to.
Right.
So I'm just proud to be able to give a voice to all of these huge people in the area who have
amazing things.
And amazing careers. John, as a senator, and Frank, doing with it. Like, I just can't, and even yourself, sitting across from some of the Brevard's movers and shakers is, that's a privilege and an honor.
Yeah,
and so to be
they're
recognized.
About here, I'm about down here.
Yeah, right. So modest. Last year, about this time, in fact, almost a year ago.
It was like literally within a week.
Yeah, and it seemed like kids went to spring break and they didn't come back.
Yeah, and some of them have, That's what the way they feel. They've just been e-learning the whole time.
Right, and but that must have disrupted, plans. As a teacher, the stress. Like, how am I going to get these lesson plans? And we have so much more that they need to complete before they, graduate to the next grade.
Yeah.
So tell us about that challenge.
Man, I'll tell you, the first challenge was a communications department, or the IT department under Russell Cheatham, had to deploy 15,000 devices, not like 5 or 10. They literally had to deploy so that the kids could e-learn from home. Because let me tell you something, a week's worth of learning that you lose is, you look at some of the statistics, the last time that kids truly lost a year of education like they did now, they look back at how long that generation lost. They lost almost $20,000 a year in aggregate wealth based upon the fact that they didn't get that education that they wanted.
Wow.
So you look at some of the stuff, we don't want to fall behind. So Russell Cheatham and his team went out and deployed 15,000. Now, you go give them to them. Now that's great, but there's a lot of children that are less fortunate that don't have internet. So all of a sudden, of our biggest, L3 Harris and other corporations, Northrop Grumman, donated so that we could get hotspots. We deployed 4,000 hotspots to different places inside the schools, inside the community. So you're talking homes. You have principals showing up. I was knocking on doors for a mobile feed site that we created, and there was a principal knocking on doors trying to hand out laptops at the time. So deploy
15,000 laptops.
Think about taking an entire group of 67,000 kids, sending them home, then trying to educate them and feed, because you have to understand some of these kids are only getting fed inside of our schools. When they go home, they don't get fed. So kids are starving, kids are not learning, and then all of a sudden it's thrown on the education. The mobilization that took didn't get a quarter of what it deserved. And then talk about being the teacher that tries to to teach that online for the first time. I mean, you're look at me. I can't do it. I'm not in a box. Like I am all over the room. You couldn't even keep a camera on me, right?
Right.
But here it is. So not only those pieces, but then you got to talk about we fed not only the kids but the parents through our mobile feed sites. So it was just an amazing deployment from multiple areas. So we had to go through that. And then for the next, then we had to figure out how we're going to reopen and everything else. And it was a lot of work. But I'm honored to have been able to be there to go through it.
And a lot of crucial decision making.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like you said, distributing that much food, computers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a military act.
Oh, no.
I mean, as far as
literally.
like this, I mean, to be able to employ with that amount of execution.
In the first 30 days, we deployed over 1 million meals.
That's amazing.
I think it was the first 2 weeks. It was insane.
And you guys
Kevin Thornton was amazing.
And you guys had no experience with that.
Oh, no. I mean, come on. And that's what the thing about education that not many people, I am so sick and tired of people saying that if you can't, you go teach or whatever. You know that old saying?
Right.
Like horse shit, okay? I'm sorry to swear on your air, but the bottom line is that we're fed a different thing. Sometimes the people up in Tallahassee pass laws and they're not attuned to the school district, so we have to adjust. Sometimes our community throws stuff at us. Education is about being mobile and nimble and being able to do that on a dime and then being able to react. And I'll tell you, the staff that we have at BPS is amazing in doing that. And that's what we ended up doing.
And then on top of that, you also had to now, you got a pandemic. That's what we're being told. Like, so now you also have to now get your janitorial providers, your janitors, to now disinfect 100% of that school, lockers, under desks. I mean, think about all the surfaces, buses.
I mean, you talk about the extra workload, and I have to commend Superintendent Mullins. He actually didn't lay off anybody. So we had a lot of people who at the time were scared. Well, I mean, you're talking about
everybody was scared.
Aftercare workers. Yeah. You're talking about lunch providers, custodians, everybody. You're like, what are we going to do? We found a way to pay them. And that doesn't get enough credit either, is that those people didn't go home without a job because BPS had their back. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about, think about it.
There was no headlines with layoffs.
No.
Yeah.
Right. And BPS, you think about the custodian that goes through that classroom every day and just kind of wipes down and does some stuff, and they do an amazing. Now you got to wipe down every time a kid eats inside of a cafeteria. You got to wipe down that table before the next group of kids comes in. You got to wipe. I mean, you increase the custodial line by twice as many hours. Everything, and our team did it flawlessly. Like they're amazing. So.
Yeah, to employ that kind of response to something that nobody again planned for, and so and at the same time, you have governors making arbitrary decisions. You have county governments, municipalities, townships. Everybody's trying to scramble. Mayors
just trying to figure it out. There's no playbook. There's no playbook, and now none of them deserve any fault.
And that's partly why I personally criticize the CDC. That's all you do is plan for these things, and you had no handbook. Like, here you go, Governor. Like, you have all I'm sure you're chasing other things, this tribe in the Amazon, got infected by a monkey, whatever. And you're keeping an eye on different things going on around the world. But partly you should have a whole department going, okay, in this case, this is what happens for a local, thing. This is for a global thing. This is, and then now everybody has the same sheet of music. So we're not dealing with arbitrary decisions up here, and every governor's making weird things. It's like people just were, I guess I need to do this. And so without a game plan, I thought that was a big shortcoming. Yeah, and hopefully there is that. But for any school board to make that conscious effort to we need to get laptops in all these homes. We need to get lunches in all these homes. We need to deploy
like that. Like a week.
Like a switch.
Like, how do you do that? And again, Russell Cheatham, he deserves a huge award. Russell Cheatham.
Well, everybody, let's give Russell some recognition. Certainly, if you see him, give him an attaboy. But no, I think the whole school board deserves a round of applause. And
we get to be the ones that make the tough decisions to go down, but we are the ones that sit there. The other ones that are in the trenches deserve the most credit. We don't deserve a lot of the credit that the staff does for us.
When it was time to start having those discussions, okay, now it's summer, we have to make a resolution for the fall. Are we inviting people back? Are we continuing the meal program, the hotspot program? What did that look like? How were those discussions? I'm sure there was some heated.
We had two
controversy.
13-hour sessions.
Wow.
Pounding through it, talking through each one of the sessions, going through it, and literally pins and needles. Thousands of people were on our Facebook watching. There were people making comments. I formed study groups. We did such a good job here in Brevard that I became one of the leaders for the state on a COVID reopening task force for the rest of the school districts. Yeah. The School Board Association's Board of Directors, I led the task force over on the for the whole state of Florida with a lot of there's about 5 of us that put out guidelines and questions. And I focused my main portion on the capital reopening, which was all of your custodians and bus drivers and all of that stuff. Right. But I think one of the things that doesn't go in, we as a school district have multiple layers. You have unfortunately, the biggest piece is the cost. Because if we had unlimited funds to do whatever we wanted, we would, the things that we could do in education would take us past every single other country. But we're forced with cost constraints. So when a lot of our decisions that were being made were not only from the humanistic side, but the education side, but then also the financial side. So like some of the people were saying, hey, why are you sitting there and you want to mandate masks, right? Let's talk about that. The main reason is that every single time one of our people hits the ICU, it cost us $110,000. In the first 2 weeks of school, we hit 10 people in the ICU that cost us $1.2 million. Now, a laptop is $200. Figure out how many laptops you can get for that amount of money. And that is our bottom line. So you start you have to put in the restrictions to control the cost. And that's one of the things that not many people understood in the beginning. And one of the things that was continual. The other piece is dadgummit, you're sitting in a classroom and many people sat back and they said, well, why do we have to have those masks at the time? Well, the reason is because you had classrooms with 20 kids inside of a classroom that shared air with a teacher who maybe have some issues as far as being, you know what I mean?
Immediate efficient. Yeah.
So you got to make all those quick decisions with no true guidance. And go from there. And then the CDC did come out and the DOH came out with some good guidelines, and we worked with them very closely. Like our local DOH was amazing. But in the end, when you look at DOH guidelines, CDC guidelines, you also have to have the other side of it where, look, I think we don't need to be like some of these other states where they completely shut down, send the kids out. Because I will tell you right now, the negative effects to what we just did with some of the students that we had to do is going to carry on a lifetime. Listen to this. The dark web is up 200% because all of the individuals know that these kids are on these they're all on their gadgets. Parents aren't locking out. So you have all these predators that are using this online platforms to get into these kids because now all of a sudden the kid's on the computer. Well, let me go search on the internet and let me see what you find, right? You have abuses that don't get reported because kids are e-learning. So you have kids that are at home. The only place they get fed sometimes and they can report abuse is inside of our schools. So when we had that time period where kids weren't, we saw an increase, a huge spike when the kids came back in abuse cases and everything else. You talk about the knowledge gap that's happening. It's done, and it's time to get these kids back. It's time to get them back as much as we can there's going to be some kids that need to be socially distanced, maybe Brevard virtual and those programs, but it's time to get these kids back. There is severe social anxiety now that's going to come out of some of these students that have been sitting at home on the e-learning. I mean, you should see some of them.
I mean, without homecomings, proms, football games.
Think about yourself if you locked yourself on a computer for 7 hours a day for an entire year. And then all of a sudden you come out and they're like, okay, now run back into a room with 500 people and go start dancing. It is a different one. We are seeing some stuff. I had a friend of mine. She says, she was a teacher from up north. She just retired. And she said that after 30 years of teaching, she has never seen what she saw in the classrooms this year with the kids coming in from e-learning. Because throughout the year, the kids are coming back, right? The parents are like, okay, it's safe.
It's been a year.
We've been vaccinated, whatever that is, we're coming back. And one of the issues that you have is that they ended up, the kids come back and they are literally socially inept as far as communications and everything else because everything's been through a mobile platform. For instance, I went and substituted at Melbourne High School the other day. The kids all came in the first block. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about your names. Let's talk about who this is. And let's just get to know each other because you have an hour and 45 minutes. Let's take 5 minutes and know each other.
Icebreakers, yeah.
Literally. Yeah. They started picking teams for a war review that I put together, and they didn't even know the person that was sitting next to them. And I was like, this is different what we're doing.
Right.
And we've got to get back to what we know education is best. And I'll tell you what, the hybrid learning is killing our teachers. So this learning where they're on 2 different platforms and they're trying to teach these kids and that kids,
makes no sense.
God bless our teachers right now because they've been hit with this, but it's time to get rid of it. Because not only that, but you can't tell me that the kid that's hybrid learning is learning the same as in the class, and you can't tell me that the kids who are in the class aren't being inhibited because of the kids that are on hybrid learning. Now, that's what we had to do. We had to do that. But I'm telling you right now, we got to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think would be a perfect answer now that we've had a year to figure it out?
Sure.
Some kids have decided to go back. Some parents are still reluctant and keeping them as a homeschool.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's been a whole nother thing. Where, me growing up and probably yourself as well, there was like 2 kids out of like 60 kids. That I knew
that were homeschooled.
We're homeschooled.
Yeah.
And now that ratio must be like 1 in 5.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's actually about 5,000 students out of 68,000 total, or out of 72,000 are homeschoolers.
About 8%?
It's not. Yeah, I'd say it's probably hovers around 4.
Oh, 4.
When you start putting in the charter schools and all the other stuff.
Roger, okay.
We get it in there. Okay, so anyways, homeschool, I work very well with them. One of the reasons I got elected originally was the homeschool groups got behind me, fought for a lot of the stuff, and they have some amazing, amazing curriculums.
Good.
So and I'll just be honest, my 18-year-old e-learns because she works at a place called Kehoe Animal Clinic, and they do not allow them to go to in-person school because they have to worry about the customers and everybody else. Totally understand that. My 9-year-old, she goes to school at Suntree Elementary, and she goes in person, and she is the mask Nazi, right? She wear your mask, everything else. But we held my son from going into preschool, which a lot of the parents did because, you can stay home. So we became a homeschooling family too.
Oh, great. Okay.
I will tell you right now, we have the largest contingent of kindergarten and preschoolers coming in next year because parents held them back. You will see the largest pre-K and kindergarten enrollment in the history of education next year. Promise you. We're going to need so many pre-K and kindergarten teachers. Right. It will be astronomical.
Fascinating. As far as the kids, are they behind? Do they need special sessions?
Perfect example. So our e-learners are 0.75 GPA lower on average than the people that are in, right? Here's another fact for you. This is big news.
Yeah.
E-learners actually have a higher rate of getting COVID than the people that are inside of our schools. Yeah. Listen.
Well, I guess their immunity's not being challenged.
Well, it's not only that. Yeah. It's the fact that you have these parents that said, "Oh, my kid's e-learning because of this," and then they go travel the world, or they're doing all these other things.
Good
right?
point. Good point.
No, like we have parents. I talk to my teachers all the time. I have teachers say, "Yeah, the kid flips up the screen and they're in like a different part of the country. Like there's a landmark in the background, right? And they're like, this is crazy. Like, which look, if you're a parent, you want to take advantage of it. That's great. If the kids are learning, that's great. But in some cases, let's look at some of the low socioeconomic areas where the parents. Some of them don't have the skills that are needed in order to teach some of those kids some of the skills that they need. And I'll tell you this much. There's a lot of families out.
And that's a valid fact.
Yeah, and there's a lot of families out there right now that are appreciating public education right now because as soon as they had to start taking care of their kids, it was ridiculous.
Get them out of here. So I remember, again, being a guy without any kids' dependents, I don't really know the struggle, but what I've heard from my peers who have had the kids, spring break, normal, another week of spring break, another week of spring break, and it was a novelty. It's like, wow, I get to have my kid, and then the reality,
get them back.
Are they going back into the fall? Please take them. Please take them. Please take them. Because all of a sudden I was like, hey, I'm going surfing, I'm going golfing, got to babysit, dude. And I was like, "Oh, this now this is affecting me."
Get your kids back.
I don't even have any skin in the game, like little, and I still felt the effect. And now, and I was starting to see a dynamic with the parent and their kids changing, because now it was like, okay, now you're with me. Now I got to be your role model ish.
Right.
I got to be your teacher.
Yeah.
And I got to be your disciplinarian.
Yeah.
And then I still got to take care of you and love you at the end of the day. And it was like really tough.
So talk about the economic effect of that. Now follow this.
Okay.
if we have parents that are forced to stay home, and this is one of the main reasons we decided that we wanted to open and really carry it. If you take, and right now, the female workforce has been set back almost 30 years. And let me explain. If you look at the metrics of women in the workforce, it has dropped to the level of the 1980s. And the reason for that is because who's the caregiver for all of the children?
That makes sense.
Now, when you start taking that, that's okay when you have a high socioeconomic family. But you start getting down to the low end. You tell those parents, we're not going to open up our schools. And then all of a sudden, those parents who live and die by that job are forced to quit. Let me tell you something. When we sent all those kids home, it was a massive economic drain on the economy. Think about your major workforce that were sitting there saying, hey, and there are some jobs where those people have to go into work. You can't, listen, we're all blessed to do e-learning if you're insurance, if you're this or that, but let's go into it. There are people that had to show up at work, and now we're telling them, hey, we're sending your kids home and you've got to e-learn them. Well, they got to send them to their uncle's house and all that stuff. So those people out there that think that we send to not go towards brick and mortar, we're crazy. And those were usually people that didn't understand the dynamic of some of our low socioeconomic areas.
Yeah, imagine a two-income home, and one of the persons is, has an essential job. Not everybody was furloughed, and allowed to telecommute. There are people who needed to be in that deli, needed to sweep those floors, needed to, be in that garage fixing cars. They didn't have a luxury of being able to do that type of work from home. But now they were forced to stay at home again, or pretty much work every day just to pay a babysitter or equivalent or daycare. And that doesn't make sense. You're just working to pay somebody else just to take care of your kid. So it's a very hard struggle, and that's something absolutely that I'm sure not a whole lot of people can relate to or even have thought of.
The after effects of what just happened for the last 365 days is going to ripple into our economy, into our socioeconomics, into our social structure, into our gender structure for the next 20 years. And not many people understand that. And just the economic drop of not having those people, those individuals that were caregivers, to be inside the workforce, the spending, we need to, at this point, with everybody that can get their vaccinations, right? Children, I think they were saying, should have their vaccinations sometime in the beginning to end of fall. We need to get back. We need to open this thing up because it's time to get us back. We can't let this virus eat us alive internally. We need to show a strength as far as a culture and a community that we're going to be better than this thing. And that includes either getting your vaccinations or getting better at getting healthier and making your own decision. And
diet,
let's
exercise,
go. Let's go.
And I wonder if there's going to be any kind of new curriculum. Maybe there's going to be some new interest with some of these students in immunology or whatever it is, and seeing, maybe like a new interest. So maybe there'll be some new, virus, doctors, or kids with that interest. I hope there's going to be a byproduct that maybe we don't see right now, but that maybe we'll realize in 3-4 years or so, when we have a lot of interests, communicable diseases, and stuff like that.
And think about this. We now are a culture who is very conscious of those communicable diseases, right? So there's going to be an entire economy built around that social conscience, and there's going to be jobs that are going to be available for those individuals to fill. So you're 100% right. I mean, you may even have a career and technical program soon that is specific to that industry. There's going to be inspectors. There's going to be, it's going to be, think about the workforce once we come out of this and they say, so in many areas, having a clean workforce is also where they're not going to be able to get COVID, because we all know that they're saying now that the virus, you can still get it again, that there's variants that are becoming stronger. There's a lot of the different pieces, right? So what ends up happening is we're going to have workforce where if you can continue to work with your workforce and not have people leave because of sicknesses, your productivity is going to be higher. So I could see consultants in the future that come in to help workforces identify areas where COVID or other related diseases would be able to knock out a workforce, because it will kill a small business when half of them are going out. I mean, did you hear Tom Cruise was losing his mind on his entire set the other day because they were not socially distancing or something like that? So, I mean, that is out there, right? That's a concern for many, and I think you're right.
Occupational therapists, guidance counselors maybe need to be trained in now how to be, like, I don't know, like damage control, because you may have somebody with a panic attack, you may have some, and there's maybe some conflicts between, someone who can't wear a mask because of an asthma or a respiratory, thing. But you may have somebody who's like militant, like, you better wear your mask.
Like my 9-year-old.
Right. Like, but I can't, because and then of course, and there's a personal debate there as well. And I think there's also some parent groups who don't feel like, they're being represented. So I think that, so we're already seeing kind of like some counter groups coming up and saying, hey, we parents need their rights.
Yeah. And I think you're 100% right. We have a group of parents, and rightfully so, who have the opinion that we need to open this thing back up. And they're right. Look, whether you have to, as a school board member, represent all of your different constituents, and you have to take in all opinions, right? So we have a group out there, Moms for Liberty, who their main thing is parent choice, right?
Right.
But the other part of it is personal liberties and everything else that comes out of that parent choice, right? And that's a really good area to be in. We as a school district try to strive to do as much as we can and notify, but there are some areas where I think that we could improve. And I'm glad that an organization like Moms for Liberty comes out and says, hey, we need these parents to be notified. We need these parents for this. And it keeps us on our toes. Remember what we were talking about, school board members that have been in for a while, and you're not on sharp, you're not listening to your constituency and all that stuff. Well, get Moms for Liberty will wake you up real quick, right? So the key is that you got to make sure that you recognize what the positives and negatives are in any group, and then listen to them. I don't think that they're counter to anything that we need. I think that they're a great organization that's got some positive things that are coming out, along with whether you're Republican or Democrat. They all have these great ideas, and we need to pull them together to come out with the best product that we can. And a lot of the things that they're saying is like, hey, man, we don't need the masks. Open up the schools. We're doing that. And I think you're seeing that sentiment grow stronger and stronger. And listen, if everybody's standing back and they have the opportunity to be vaccinated, why should a child have to wear a mask? You know what I mean? Why is that? Let's make that debate. And I think that that's what's coming. That's what's the greatest thing is I love these challenges. I love the opportunity to try to get into that area. And it's coming. And I think that Moms for Liberty representing that section of our group is good. I think the Moms Demand Action there's some other stuff that they're coming out with. They have a great organization that's going to start talking about gun safety and everything else. You got a lot of kids that have been sitting at home with parents who may not be locking up a lot of their weapons. There's going to be that piece. There's a lot of stuff. And I think if we find the good in each group and then harness that, we're going to do a great job. Yeah.
And on that note, we've already exceeded our
so
hour.
Sorry, man.
Isn't it so easy? I mean, people are like, I don't know if I could talk for an hour, but I mean, absolutely.
You do a great job. You roll through it. You do amazing.
Well, I appreciate it, Matt. But ultimately, thanks so much for you coming in, sharing.
No. Wait, we're going to the airplane. You're going to get in it. You promised. Everybody here. They know you're getting in the jet.
I'm on the.
You're on the hook.
I'm on the hook. So certainly we will. I mean, I think that's going to be a privilege anyway. So
it'll be fun.
Yeah, airplane fuselage, helicopter fuselage, rocket ships. I mean, I'll podcast anywhere. For all those that have been watching live, thanks so much for your contributions. I really hope you enjoyed the topic of discussion, and of course, learning more about Matt Susin and what he does for all of us here in the beautiful county here, Brevard County on the Space Coast of Florida. Make sure, again, if you're just listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, to just hit that subscribe. Make sure you get notified every time we release another episode. And of course, for all those, once again, all the best and much success no matter what you're doing. We'll talk to you later. And of course, we love you. Take care. Until next time.